Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 2 of SO 242. Let's go ahead and get started. So, want to spend some time talking about the assignments for this week. So, you have Chapter 7 in New World Reader and Chapters 3 and 11 in OpenStax, which is the free online textbook. In addition, you have some really awesome TED Talks. They're some of my favorites, and students seem to find that they're their favorites too for each class. So, make sure you watch the TED Talks. As usual, you're going to have your forum, your first reply. Initial replies due Thursday at midnight, and then 2 peer responses due Sunday at midnight. Remember that I grade as I go, so you want to wait till the end of the night to see your full score. It's out of 30. Your initial response is 20, and then each peer response is 5. Top learning points due Sunday at midnight. Make sure that you're adding details to what text, and also where in the text, and specifically what point that you're going to be talking about for each one. Remember, there's 4 that you have to add: 1 from New World Reader, 1 from the OpenStax, 1 from TED Talks, and then the 4th one is of your choice. This week, you're going to submit a social context paper. So this is really talking about you, your family, and your culture. What makes you you? You want to make sure that you use a sociology term in your paper. Could be something that I defined in one of these Monday videos, or you'll find some glossary entries that you're going to do, the whole class will do, and you could certainly pinpoint some of those. Or you can certainly use something out of the OpenStax. Just make sure that you cite it and that you have a works cited page. I'm looking for 1 to 2 pages written. Remember, double space, MLA formatting. You can certainly use I in this paper because you'll be talking about yourself. And I want to make sure you have an introduction and conclusion. You want to refer to the syllabus. It talks about really identifying 3 cultural factors that make your family who you are. Okay, I look forward to reading those. This week, glossary entries, and you may not have ever had to create a glossary entry in Moodle. There's a short video about how to do it, but basically, while you're reading this week or anything from week 1 that you weren't exactly sure about, I want you to go ahead and look it up and add it to the class glossary. You're looking for a word and at least 2 sentences about that word, and make sure you cite it. There is some examples that I put in there: homogeny and xenophobia. So if you want to take a look at what I'm looking for, you could certainly look up those. Each student will be required to do 2 by midnight. And then there is an online Moodle quiz. I think it's about 10 questions, and you have 2 attempts, and this is also due Sunday at midnight. So if you have any questions about any of these assignments, let me know. Again, I really want you to be reading the text and relating it to your life, whether socially, professionally, academically. For me, I live and breathe sociology, and I think it could be applied at all levels. So I hope that you're finding that translation for you as well. So this week, the TED Talks videos are going to be awesome, and I ask that you all keep an open mind, and as you're listening to the TED Talk speakers, or as you're reading through information about race and ethnicity, try really hard to be aware of what your assumptions are, and also try to be open to some other viewpoints in sociology. Remember that we study culture and we study patterns, and we're going to start talking about race and ethnicity and how all that kind of culminates into some of maybe the issues that our nation has been facing. So just to kind of start off, think about in your head, and you could do this activity if you want, but think about your 5 top Facebook friends, and you can define top any way you want. Could be the ones that you read their posts the most, or that you're the closest to in real life, and so you tend to comment on their things or share their posts. And think about who that is. And if you aren't on Facebook, think about your 5, the people that are closest to you, family or friends. And I want you to do is try to do a catalog of their gender, race, age, education level, their religion if you know it, and if you want to take a guess at their socioeconomic status. When we do this in class, our students will go ahead and do this and kind of look at the list. And if you actually do it, you might notice that the people that you're closest to look like you, and they may have the same interests as you and the same likes as you. And that is extremely, extremely common. Like, likes, like. And so really what we're getting into is this concept of the stranger. And in sociology, it is, and really in any field, people like the people who act, think, and look like them. Especially if you think about going to a party, sometimes what you do is you want to find that one thing that connects you with somebody else. So if you know nobody else and somebody's wearing a K-State or a KU sweatshirt, you might walk up to that person and strike up a conversation. So generally when we want to lay a foundation, you look for commonality. But on the flip side of that, when somebody doesn't look like you, doesn't act like you, and doesn't have the same thoughts, then it creates this concept of the stranger where we sometimes see it as a negative thing, and from their assumptions are created and can grow into other things. So, for example, there are lots of examples in history of when people didn't look like us, and it could be in America or in other countries, but I'm sure you can call to mind lots of examples in history where there was a lot of conflict, socially, economically, politically, when people don't have the same interest. So nothing that I'm saying is new, but one thing I would say is there is something called a racial dot map in Moodle under week 2. And if you click on it, what it basically shows you is the United States. You could probably look further and see, but I want you to look at the United States, and it actually breaks down the population by race. You'll see the criteria there on the right, and I want you to take a look at the map and see what you notice about it. I think it's really interesting, and you can create your own reflections or process that information however you wish. Okay, so now kind of carrying on with this concept of the stranger, some of the biggest differences would be in terms of race and ethnicity. So wanted to give everyone a baseline definition here so we're all on the same page for this class. Race is really talking about visible physical characteristics that a single group might have. So an individual may be Asian, they may be Latino, or they could consider themselves Black. That is something that people are born with and they can't change. So that's usually when we think of race, we think of those physical characteristics. Ethnicity is really the culture that somebody has grown up with, or a culture where people tend to share and have acquired through social interaction. So for me, my family comes from Eastern Europe, mostly Hungarian and Poland. And so because of that, I grew up on pierogies, and my grandma and my grandpa's speaking Polish and Hungarian. Some of the cultural things that we do over Christmas and New Year's are related back to Hungary and Poland. And so that's my ethnicity. And so you want to think about that in terms of if there's anything that really would identify you here in the United States or from your ancestors that define your ethnicity. Moving on, kind of the next thing that we're going to start talking about, and this is a huge concept in sociology, is the idea of a dominant group and a minority group. And a dominant group is really a group that has power, that has not only social and economic but political power, and the political power is really what gives them more power, but it's a group that you tend to see. So in America, we would say that white is the dominant group. We might also say that male is a dominant group. On the flip side, a minority group is really culturally or physically distinct. So generally it has to do with their race and ethnicity. And this group experiences unequal treatment. And they're minority not because there's less of them, meaning that they just don't have as many people in the dominant group, but really the minority group relates to lack of power, the lack of power. And minority and majority relations are a huge part of what sociologists like to study. And in this week, we're going to talk about, or you hear things in your TED Talks about unconscious bias, and these are some of the ideas and assumptions that are placed into our minds, whether by watching our family and friends, watching television and the media, and then kind of subconsciously taking them in as fact. And from that unconscious bias, if it goes unchallenged, then it starts to turn into some other kind of feelings or some other kind of sociology terms, and nobody is going to find that any of this is new, but I really want you to think about these concepts in terms of sociology and the culture that we create, and how the culture we create then translates into things like stereotypes and being prejudiced. So just to kind of talk about on the base level, after unconscious bias, you might have a stereotype where it's just oversimplifying a generalization about a specific group. So a stereotype might be that all Asians are good at math, or all blondes are not smart. And from there, we have these stereotypes and we joke about them, ha ha ha. But for people who don't challenge that thinking or never meet anybody from that specific group to say anything different, you might find that there are some negative beliefs or feelings regarding a certain group based on that. So, well, blondes aren't not that smart, so I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of blondes and, have concerns over their finances or something. So you can see how it could escalate. There is a website that I have on here, airbase.us, and it talks about, there's a lot of different ethnic groups that they have in this one specific website, but it talks about how the media has really taken a stereotype and then aided the American people or just moviegoers into having prejudice against specific groups. So if you're into movies and media, that may be a good website for you. Kind of on the same lines of thinking about the concept of a stranger, and again, these assumptions going unchecked or unchallenged, you might find that people then are treated differently. And this may be, treated as far as laws are concerned. It could be that people aren't getting access to certain groups or education because of a way a person or a group of people are thinking about them and not knowing them. And then finally, if discrimination goes unchecked or unchallenged, it could lead to racism. And this is where one group feels that they're superior over another group just based off of that they're different. All of these concepts, I think, are very pertinent in our society today, especially in the last couple of years. All of this keeps coming around. So again, I know you all come with diverse experiences, and you have a variety of, beliefs and values. In this class, just ask you to think about how sociology tackles these issues. We welcome everybody who has their feelings and beliefs. Just, make sure that you are backing everything up. So I hope that you continue these conversations in your forums or maybe with your family and friends. That's going to end this week's talk. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, especially about the homework. I look forward to seeing you week 3 for our next discussion. Thank you.